Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another one of my FutureFight Vanguard series. I know this one's a little late, and by a little late, I mean a lot late, but a long time coming. But I've had some things going on. I'm preparing for the Jacksonville, now made Atlanta regionals. So yeah, I'll be there, especially since Atlanta is my home city. So definitely come see me there. I've been having some problems with my ankle recently. For those of you who remember, like there was like a couple years back at Atlanta Regionals, back when it was at the Sheraton Hotel, where right before the event I fell down the stairs and broke my ankle, and I still decided to play through the entire event with a broken ankle. Like I don't know. I was like really competitive, I guess, and the paramedics came. They were like, "Yeah, your ankle's broken." It was like right before the event. Like I couldn't even get up the stairs to register. My friends carried me upstairs, and then I talked to Bushiroad and had to make me a deal that I was gonna sit at table one all day because I couldn't move. So that event wasn't very fun because instead of like walking around and talking to people and having fun, I just had to be like stuck inside of seat one or chair one, table one. But anyways, that's the story for a different day. This is going to be the future fight for Coral, I believe is today. So yeah, I don't think there needs to be anything else said about that. Let's flip over our strides here as usual. Bam. And then we're gonna get right into the deck list. So the Coral deck is basically like, in my opinion, like I don't know. It's kind of like strange. It's fun to play, but it's very basic in my opinion. Like there's nothing like outrageously cool about it. But it is a fun deck to play, and it is a kind of good deck to play if you like being on like a 13k base and stuff like that. So we have our two grade 3 corals that we run as our grade 3. Our first coral is Shangri-La Star Coral, and Shangri-La Star Coral is our break ride for the deck. Or sorry, not our break ride, but our cross ride for the deck. Been a long time since I kind of dealt with a cross ride, to be honest, but being 13k base in any meta just seems like it's still good because since a lot of people nowadays are still making 16k and 21k attacks, like having the ability to guard that for a 5k or a 10k as opposed to a 10k or 15k sometimes makes a huge difference. Talking about the abilities of Shangri-La Star, so it has technically 3 skills. The first skill is an activation limit break skill, which is you have to be at 4 damage or more, and it has to be during the main phase. So you can counterblast 1, soul blast 1, choose one of your Bermuda Triangle rear guards, return it to your hand, and this unit gets plus 3,000 power until the end of the turn. Then you can choose 1 card with Coral in its name from your hand and put it into your soul, and then if you do, you get to draw 2 cards. So ideally, like, if you somehow ride to 3 and you're at 4 damage, and it's not time for you to stride, like you ride to 3 first, and your opponent's still at 2, if you're limit break, that would be a good time to like put yourself as cross ridden. And something that I like about this deck is that you don't have to ride the grade 3 and then put the cross ride on top, because that would be like too slow, like riding 2 turns in a row just to be 13k base. So you can ride straight into Shangri-La Star Coral, and then you can use its ability to shove the other grade 3 coral into the soul, and then you'll be at 13k base for the rest of the whole game, as long as you don't soul blast out that grade 3. And you get to draw 2 cards on top of that, so that's pretty solid. Its second ability is, like we were saying before, what makes it a cross ride. If you have a card named Aurora Star Coral in your soul, this card gets plus 2,000 power continuously for the whole turn. And then its third ability is it has Lord, which means that if you have a unit without the same clan as this unit cannot attack, which is not a problem because of Bushiroad's rules of clan fight, meaning that you can only use all of one clan inside of a deck. Moving on to our other grade 3 coral, we have 4 Aurora Star Coral. So what Aurora Star Coral does is you really don't want to even ride her. Like the only reason that we run her is because A, she's a coral card, and B, she can get cross ride off for our Shangri-La Star Coral. But yeah, you really never ride her, but I'll go over her ability anyways. So her auto ability is Limit Break 4. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, you can Counterblast 2, and then if you do, you Soul Charge 1 and choose one of your Bermuda Triangle rear guards, bounce it to your hand, and then this unit gets plus 5,000 power. So kind of basic skill, like it's whatever, honestly, like it's not that good in this meta, but yeah, you can use it when the time calls for it. Like, it's better to have an ability than to not have an ability, you know? But its second skill is if you have a card named Shiny Star Coral in your soul, this unit gets plus 1,000 power continuously, so it becomes 11k base just like everything else in the meta when you have the grade 2 in the soul, which you always should, because this is a ride chain deck that's actually pretty consistent with getting the ride chain off, so yeah. Then we have 4 Shiny Star Coral moving into our grade 2s. Shiny Star Coral is our grade 2 Coral, and its first ability is if you have a card named Fresh Star Coral in your soul, then this unit gets plus 1,000 power. So this card turns into a 10k base continuously if you have the grade 1 in the soul. So typical ride chain stuff. The second ability, which is actually pretty good in my opinion because it helps you like rush without punishment, in my opinion. Like, what you do is when this unit's attack hits a Vanguard, you get to choose one of your Bermuda Triangle rearguards in the front row and return it to your hand. And then if you have a Fresh Star Coral, which is the grade 1 in your soul, then you get to choose one Bermuda Triangle rearguard in your back row and bounce it to your hand as well. So this allows you to, if you don't always get the grade 1 ride off, like off of the starter gains Forerunner if you don't ride the grade 1. So basically what happens is you ride your grade 1, that's not Fresh Star, you move back the starter, and then later you're able to bounce that starter back to your hand, and it's a free 10k shield in your hand. So yeah, pretty good. Even though ideally you do want to ride the grade 1. But then we have 4 active pink Leona. So these are some new cards that came out to support Coral in the Bermuda Prismatic Divas set. So its first ability is when this unit attacks a Vanguard, if you have a grade 3 or greater with Coral in its name, this unit gets plus 2,000 power. So it's an 11k attacker if you're on Coral and you're grade 3 or more, which you always will be in this deck. So basically, if you're grade 3 or more in this deck, then it's an 11k attacker. Then it has an activation skill that activates in the soul. If it's in your soul, you can counterblast 1 during the main phase, and if you have a grade 3 or greater with Coral in its name, you can put this card into your hand, then you call it to rearguard, and then you soul charge 1. So I'm not really aware of like why it doesn't just go from soul to the field, but I'm guessing that there's a big reason that I'm forgetting about or either didn't realize, which is the reason that it goes from, you know, maybe so that it can't like count as being superior called, but I guess it's still superior called. I don't know what the reason is that it's worded like that, but basically you take it, you counterblast 1, you put it into your hand, then you immediately call it, and then you soul charge 1. So pretty good card. You can call it out from the soul, and there's a lot of abilities in this deck that require you to either put cards into the soul or search a card from your deck and put it into soul. So you can like search out this card as one of your targets if you need an attacker. Moving on, we have Tsundere Rival Ruka. So what Ruka does is it's another Coral-based card. When this unit is returned from your hand, or returned to your hand from the rearguard circle, you can counterblast 1, and if you do, you get to choose up to 1 card with Coral in its name from your hand, call it to rearguard. It gets plus 4,000 until the end of the turn. Then if you have a face-up card with Coral in your G-zone, then you soul charge 1. So pretty good card. Ruka basically just allows for extra attacks, like with in combination with stuff like I don't know, like the Coral Stride or Olivia. If you decide to run that in your build, like you can bounce everything and then use Ruka's skill to counterblast 1 and play like a grade 1 Coral, which will be 11k. Play a grade 2 Coral, which would be 13, or you can play a grade 3 Coral that will either be 14 or 15, depending on which one you play to the field. And then you get to soul charge as well, so not a bad card at all. Then we run 4 Bermuda Triangle Stride Fodder, pretty self-explanatory. We want to stride in this deck. 4 Image Master Kukuri, this is our unflip PG. Pretty self-explanatory as well. We just want to unflip our damage. It's probably our best choice as our PG. Moving on, we have 4 Fresh Star Coral. So this is our grade 1 coral in the ride chain. Its first ability is just like the others, except it says when you have a card named Angelic Star Coral in your soul, this unit gets plus 1000 power. So this unit becomes an 8k if you have the starter in the soul. So basically, you just, always ride this first, or try to if you can. And then it has another ability that says when a grade 2 other than Shiny Star rides this unit, if you have a unit named Angelic Star Coral in your soul, you can look at the top 7 cards of your deck, search for 1 Shiny Star, and then ride it. So basically, the best kind of backup to do with this is, let's say that something that I really like about the Coral deck is that it's very good about covering the ways that you miss the ride chain. So if you get the ride chain, that's all well and good, but if you don't get the ride chain, it's very consistent with trying to fix that or trying to give you ways to remedy that. So basically, Angelic Star, if you ride Fresh Star, then you'll get to use Angelic Star skill, which we'll get into in a minute. And then when you're on Fresh Star, you can either ride Shiny Star and you're good to set up into your grade 3, or you can ride Leona and you can look at the top 7 for a Shiny Star, then ride it. Then next turn you can pull out Leona out of the soul with its own ability to the field, so you're not losing a card technically. So pretty good. Then we run 1 Admire Successor Lyrica. I really didn't like this card enough to run it at more than 1. It's just decent in my opinion, but yeah, so its ability is when it's placed on the Vanguard or Rearguard circle, you can reveal 5 cards from the top of your deck, and then you search for up to 1 grade 2 or less card with coral in its name and put into your hand, and then if you choose a card from your hand, or sorry, if you do, choose a card from your hand and put into your soul. So what this allows you to do is this is going to be your backup ride in case you don't have Fresh Star Coral. Ideally, if you have Lyrica or Coral, you want to ride one of those, the ideal one being Coral. But you can get Lyrica, look at the top 5 cards of your deck for a grade 2 or less Coral card, so you can get a grade 2, a grade 1 Coral. So pretty good. And then if you do, you get to choose a card from your hand and put it into the soul. So if you have a Leona sitting around, or any Coral basically is good to put into the soul, because there are effects in this deck that go off based off of how many corals you have in the soul. Then Lyrica has an ability that activates from the soul that says choose a grade 2 or greater card from your hand, put into your soul, and then if you have a grade 3 or greater card with coral in its name, you get to put this card into your hand, call this card to Rearguard circle, and then you choose another unit and it gets plus 2000 power. So it's very similar to Leona. It can pull itself out of the soul for you putting a grade 2 in there. So what you can do is you can put a Leona into the soul to call this, and then call Leona out with its own ability, and then you'll get the soul charge, and then this column together should be 20k, which is not, it's not over 21, which is what we'd like to ideally hit, but it is something that gives you an extra rearguard for pretty much doing it for free. But yeah, moving on to Angelic Star Coral. This is our starter for the deck. It is what starts off our ride chain, and it says when a Fresh Star Coral rides this unit, which is our grade 1 coral, look at up to 7 cards of your deck, 7 cards from the top of your deck, and search for 1 Shiny Star Coral or an Aurora Star Coral from among them, and then reveal it to your opponent and put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. So basically what happens is when you ride the grade 1, you look at the top 7 cards of your deck for the grade 2 or the regular grade 3 coral here, and then you can put it into your hand. What that does is it helps you set up your ride chain so that you can ride properly. Then its second ability is when a Bermuda Triangle card other than Fresh Star Coral rides this unit, you can call this card to Rearguard Circle. So the second ability is pretty much Forerunner, that just says you can move your starter back if you don't ride the proper card. So then for our triggers, we do run 4 Chocho Putaruna. This is just a vanilla crit. However, I do want to talk about these really quick. The other triggers we ran. So we ran as our secondary crit, we ran Drive, Quartet, Shooplu. Now, a lot of people won't know about these cards because they're not like an old school player, and these are like some really old school triggers. But we ran 4 Drive Quartet Shooplu, 4 Drive Quartet Bublin, and 4 Drive Quartet Flows. So all the Drive Quartet cards, there's 1 crit, 1 stand, 1 draw, and 1 heal. And what that means is all of the skills work off of having each other. The only one we don't run in this deck is the stand because I just didn't find it necessary to run stands. But if you really wanted to, like, you could run stands in here, but I prefer crits in the coral deck. So what this does is if you happen to not have a good hand or something, like since this deck like attacks and bounces a lot, just like any regular Bermuda deck does, you can actually play these triggers to the field in the same column, and they'll actually like pump each other because of the skill. So for example, Shooplu gains 3k if you have a Bublin on the rearguard circle. So if you play like a Bublin and a Shooplu in the same column, that'll be 11k column, and then you can hit their Vanguard. Same with Bublin. Bublin gets 3k if you have Rest Sack, which is the stand. So the draw trigger is not really like relevant except to Shooplu, but the draw trigger can never use its ability in this deck because Rest Sack is the stand that we don't run. But Flows gets 3k for having Shooplu. So if you play a Shooplu and a heal, or a Shooplu and a draw in the same column, then that'll be 11k, and you can attack with them and then bounce it so that you don't have to worry about leaving triggers on your field. So pretty good strategy, in my opinion. Then we have 4 Arcadia Star Coral. This is one of our new strides from this set. So it says if we have a heart card with coral in our name, first it's an activation skill. So you do this during the main phase. You choose a face down card with coral from its name in your G zone and turn it face up. We usually target Frontier Star Coral, seeing as though you want to have the number of Frontier Stars be 2 or more when you go into this card as your second stride. So that's why we flip it with Arcadia Star. So we choose a card from our G zone with coral in its name and turn it face up. And then if we have a heart card with coral in our name for Vanguard, which we always will, choose up to one of our rear guards, return it to our hand, and then we search our deck for a card and put it into the soul. So this is how you get cross ride. If you just ride Shangri-La or Shangri-La Star, then you go into Arcadia Star, you search the regular grade 3 coral from the deck and just shove it into the soul, and you're instantly 13k base. And then also you choose the same number of rear guards as the number of cards with coral in your soul, and then they get plus 2,000, and then this unit gets plus 10,000. So it's always 36k, and it gives a couple of your rear guards 2k depending on how many cards with coral are in the soul. Or basically how well things were able to go for you during the beginning stages of the game. Like that's how powerful Arcadia Star is when you go into it as your first stride. But yeah, really good setup card. Not by any means a finisher, just attacks for 36. But most of the time your opponent takes it because it's in the early game and it's really big. And if they don't have a PG, they don't want to block that. Then we run 4 Frontier Star Coral. This is kind of like the main stride of the deck. So when this unit attacks, it is kind of like, Coral's Olivia. Like I say that every Bermuda deck in this set pretty much got an Olivia. But when this unit attacks, you can counterblast 1 and choose a card from your G zone and turn it face up. And so basically what you want to do is you want to take an Arcadia Star and flip up a coral, and then you want to do a coral and flip up a coral, and then you can do the last coral and flip a Arcadia Star, and then after that you have options. But I'll tell you the reason that you want to do that here in a second. So let's finish going over the ability. Counterblast 1 and choose a face down card from your G zone and turn it face up when this unit attacks. You may pay the cost. If you do, then you soul charge 1 and you choose up to the same number of rear guards as cards with coral in your soul and return them to your hand. So if you have like 5 coral cards in your soul, then you can bounce 5 cards to your hand. And for each unit returned with this effect, this unit gets plus 5,000 power. So let's say in the ideal scenario where we have 5 cards with coral in our soul, with the name coral in our soul, then we put all of our rearguards into our hand, and our Vanguard gets 25,000 power, so it'll be a 51k base by itself, which is really strong if you ask me. If they don't have a PG, your opponent's going to be pretty scared. And then if the number of face-up cards with Frontier, Star Coral in your G-Zone is 2 or more, then you get to draw a card and then choose 2 cards from your hand and call them to separate rearguard circles. So not only do you +1 from drawing when you activate this skill, you get to call 2 more so that you can stack triggers on it on that column if they don't let your Vanguard hit. So very, very solid card. I like it a lot. Then we run one of the GB8, pretty much just, like, you know, because we had space to. It's not that great, in my opinion, but if you make it to it, like, you can use it, and it's fine. Its ability is at the end of the battle that this unit attacked a Vanguard, you can choose a card from your hand and discard it, and then return all your rearguards to your hand, choose up to 5 cards from your hand and call them to separate rearguard circles, and they get plus 5,000 until the end of the turn. So, not a bad finisher, but, you know, not the greatest either. Then we have one perfect performance Angie. I kind of feel like this card should be run in every Bermuda deck for the Link Joker matchup, if not just for, like, when you have a really bad field setup and you just want to bounce everything and then gain quad drive and draw a card. Mostly I use this card against Link Joker, or when you have, like, a card on the board that you really want to blow up that's going to prevent you from doing the things you want to do, like Vanguard, Gearcat, and all that stuff. So, good card for that. Then we run one Breeze in case our opponent tries to stay or to grade lock themselves so that we can't stride first. And then we have 2 Best Sparkle Sandy. So what Best Sparkle Sandy does is, I've stated before, I think it's one of the best G-Guardians in the game. It is our flip G-Guardian from the most recent Fighters collection, and when it's placed on the Guardian Circle, we can flip a G-Guard face up in our G-Zone, and then if we do, this unit gets plus 5,000 shield for every 2 cards in our hand, and then if we counterblast 1, it can gain an additional 5k on top of that. So it ends up guarding for really big amounts, like depending on the size of your hand. Bermuda hands are always decently sized to really big, so this is pretty much like usually a no pass, or usually like a 3 or at least a 2 to pass without the counterblast, and then with the counterblast it's usually like a 3 to pass or a no pass, so pretty strong card. Then we have 4 Sailor's Medley Nausia. So what Nausia does is, when it's placed on the guard circle, we can choose a card from our hand, reveal it, and then if we have a unit with the same grade as that card, then this unit gets plus 5,000 shield until the end of the battle. Then we have 1 Highest Society Citron. So what Highest Society Citron does is, when it's placed on guard circle, choose up to 1 grade 1 or greater card from your hand and call it to the rear guard circle. And then if you called a unit, this unit gets plus 10,000 shield, so it becomes a 36k shield. Pretty good card. Then we have 1 Hand-in-Hand Leona. Hand-in-Hand Leona is not as useful in this deck as it is in other decks, I feel like, or other Bermuda decks, so to speak. But regardless, what it does is, when it's placed on the guard circle, we can choose one of our rear guards and return it to our hand. And then if you do, you get to choose a card from your hand, call it to the guard circle, and if that unit has the same name as the unit returned to your hand, then this unit gets plus 5,000 shield until the end of the battle. So pretty good. Some people say that it doesn't matter where the shield goes, but it pretty much does matter in, like, matchups like Deep Police, where they're blowing your cards, like, off of the Guardian Circle. So yeah, that was the deck, and then let's get right into the matches here momentarily. We're loading up our card fight area back. Alright, so we're gonna load our Coral Game 1. So it looks like our first game we're playing against Luard. Our opponent goes first and rides a PG. We ride a PG as well, unfortunately. So our starter moves back. So our opponent, Abyssal Owls, drops a Luard to the drop zone and then attacks us, and we no guard both attacks. Then we ride Shiny Star and we go for the rush with 2 Lolanas. He does take the first one and get a critical, so we attack his rear guard, unfortunately. And then unfortunately the last Lolana cannot attack. So he decides to just stay on grade 2, which I think was not a good choice for him because we ride and we're able to just go into Sabreeze. So we attack him with Sabreeze and we check critical, critical, and critical. And he gets pretty upset about it, but honestly that never would have happened if he would have just rode to grade 3. So that ends our first game quite quickly. I actually forgot that it ended that way, which is pretty hilarious. But yeah, I don't think that like staying on grade 2 was the best option for that guy. Then moving on, our next match is against Aquaforce. So we do ride the grade 1 this time. We just don't get anything off of the search. So we do want to pass him by being 8K, and then he gets it, and we just stay on grade 1 because we didn't have a grade 2, and I checked it thankfully. So I rode and called a grade 1, and then the attack hit, so I'm able to move a card back to my hand, and then we're able to just guard Tidal Assault. So we ride, and then we go Sabreeze on him because he chooses not to ride, because he would have to ride into Diamantes, and I guess he doesn't want to do that. So we do check a critical on him. He takes 2 damage, and then he stays on grade 2 for more time. He does 14, and then 14, and we guard all of it. We place a Leona, and he PGs our attack. We get a crit and a heal, putting on rear guard, and then he guards our attack with 2 triggers. And I'm guessing like he's kind of in a rough spot because he can't G-assist because he has the grade 3 in his hand. So it's kind of like the bad side to, you know, not wanting to ride a grade 3 that you have. But he attacks my rear guard, I guard both. And then I just attack him for 18 again. He does PG me again, and then I attack him with Leona, and then he checks grade 3 Thavis, and he actually PGs and discards the Diamantes so that he can actually G-guard. But he G-assists and doesn't get the grade 3, so he just scoops, I guess. And I guess he was going to lose the next turn anyways. So kind of his own fault. Like, when he first PG'd, if he didn't want to ride Diamantes, honestly, he should have just discarded Diamantes if he wanted to G-assist into Thavis. But because he didn't do it the first time, he was forced to keep it, and that led him into a bad spot. Lastly, we're playing against Grand Blue Night Rose. We do ride our Fresh Star Coral. We don't get anything. Like, I swear it's a curse. Like, we never get it. But and then we ride Ruka, and we don't get our search for the grade 2 either. But we do get 2 of our attacks in, and he's actually playing Performing Zombie in this Night Rose deck, which is interesting because I feel like I've never seen it played. But he looks at top 10 and gets a King Serpent off of it, so pretty good. So we play Lyrica. We use Lyrica's skill, put a card into the soul, and then we check 2 cards. One of them is critical, so he takes 2 damage, and he rides Night Rose, goes into Negro Songer, counterboss 1, calls a King Serpent, and then we guard one of his attacks. We no guard his second attack. He checks a grade 3, and a critical, so he does crit us. Then he counterboss 1 for Negro Songer to call a card, and then we take it, and he counterboss 1 to call a card, and we take it because no matter what, he was going to call more cards off of that we couldn't really block without having no hand. So that was quickly ended. Like, we got ended pretty quickly by Night Rose, but that's just, you know, Night Rose is just really strong deck. But yeah, that has been our Coral FutureFight Vanguard. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, leave me a like and comment down below. Tell me any questions or what you thought. But yeah, be sure to check out our Twitter, Facebook, all of our social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Patreon, and stuff like that. And thank you guys for supporting the channel. And this has been Josh, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye, guys.